You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 222, Shame Before, During, and After a Breakup. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Welcome, Braveheart. I'm so excited you're here to listen to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast. This is the Netflix of breakups, short, powerful, and actionable episodes that help you along your breakup journey. If you're interested in a more hands-on approach, I'd love to invite you to check out our free on-demand video training called How to Fast Forward Getting Over Your Ex Without Wasting Months or Years Feeling Jealous, Angry, or Unlovable. You'll learn how to stop letting your ex live rent-free in your mind, even if you want to get back together later, how to absolutely be sure that your life will be better than the one that you had with your ex post-breakup without it taking time, and lastly, the secret to feeling completely neutral about your ex without having to go no contact. Grab it for free at breakup-coach-dorothy.com. Let's begin the episode. Hello, beautiful Bravehearts. How is everyone doing? I am so excited to be here with you today. It is the new year. It feels good. I'm excited for what's to come this year. I actually had my mom and my dad in town for Christmas and for New Year's. And actually it was a couple days afterwards because I actually had COVID for Christmas. So I was quarantining with baby Tinkerbell, and we had a great time. I love her so much. She is my 130-pound Great Dane who is literally the love of my life. I'm obsessed with her. I was actually thinking about this the other day, so total side note, but you love what you labor for. And I really labored for Tinkerbell, not physically, obviously, but just in a lot of ways. And it makes me just love her so much more, I think. But yeah, that was just a total side note. Okay, so over the holiday season, I was coaching a lot. We had no break in our delivery of our programming or anything like that. I'm coaching throughout the week of Christmas, the week of New Year's. I love it so much. I feel like that's when my people really need me. So I show up fully in those times. And I got to coach a lot of my Bravehearts, and it was so much fun. I actually got to meet a longtime podcast listener. She had been listening to the podcast for 2 years, and she finally signed up for the program, and I got to coach her, and it was so cool. And a really neat part of that was I actually met her in real life a year ago. And so it's just so cool to meet all of you who have been listening. I feel like we need to do some sort of Get Over Your Ex podcast meetup or something. I just feel like it would be really neat. But in this coaching that I did over the holiday, there was a topic that kept coming up over and over and over again pretty regularly, and it was shame. And we need to talk about it, my beautiful badass Bravehearts, okay? I talk about dirty pain and clean pain in a different episode, so you can always go back and listen to that as well. But shame is one of those emotions that I would categorize as dirty pain. It's a negative emotion. Well, we would describe it as a negative emotion that keeps you from processing clean pain like loss and grief and sadness. And dirty pain oftentimes results in betraying yourself, being mean to yourself, participating in negative self-talk, really self-hatred. We've all been there. It's not a fun place to be. So this particular client that I'm thinking of, we talked about shame a lot, but the one that I really felt like was a good example of this, because it was kind of one of those extremes, was that this particular client was really struggling with entertaining a relationship that she knew she didn't want to entertain. And isn't that the hardest, my friends, when you're in or maybe just dabbling in a relationship that you know is unhealthy? You know it's not good for you. You know you deserve better. Like, you know that, but the knowing isn't enough to get you to leave the situation. It's a hard place to be in. And she just started the Get Over Your Ex program, and right away in the beginning, when you start the program, you come up with compelling reasons, 25 compelling reasons to get over your ex. We have a whole podcast about that as well, so you can look back. But she requested coaching on wanting help with her compelling reasons. But in her coaching request, I could just sense there was so much shame for the situation she was in. And there was no way we were going to get to compelling reasons without addressing the shame first, which, by the way, is really, really hard. And as soon as I told her I wanted to help her with her compelling reasons, like we're on the call, I see her face, it's her and I on our video call, right? As I tell her that I want to help her with her compelling reasons, but first we're going to have to address the shame, immediately you could see the tears coming through. It's such an overwhelming emotion that a lot of times we are suppressing and trying to hold down because we're too afraid or too embarrassed to even look at it. And so you could just see it coming up and bubbling up, like she's like, it's been there and she could finally just release it, and she's in this safe space where we can finally talk about it. And you know what? This shame, it's okay. It's welcomed. Hello, shame. I see you, sister. We're in it together. I feel ashamed, or I'm feeling shameful about what I've done, what I've allowed in my life, what I'm tolerating. And here's how I looked at it with my client, and how I want to urge you to look at your shame is that the first thing we had to understand was that what were the optional sentences that she was saying to herself that were making her feel shameful? It is really easy in this day and age to fall into a trap of thinking it's what you've done or what you've allowed in your life that makes you feel shameful. But I want to pull you back, and I want to remind you that it's not those circumstances that make you feel a certain way. It's actually your thoughts. It's what you make those things mean that determine how you feel. And we need to be clear about, what am I making these neutral circumstances, these things that I've done, mean about myself that are making me feel ashamed? For this particular Braveheart, she mentioned it wasn't just one thought, it was a lot of thoughts. And a lot of times it is. A lot of times it's something you've been thinking for so long that you've I can't think of the right word, but you've created a lot of thoughts that are creating shame. So the first one, I was like, let's talk about all of them, but let's do it one at a time, right? So the first one was, I shouldn't be doing this, which is a common one. This comes up in a lot of different scenarios. For this scenario, what was happening, her neutral circumstance, which I can already hear all of you yelling at me saying it's not neutral. When I say neutral circumstance, I don't mean that you have to feel neutral about it. I just want you to recognize that it's a circumstance that doesn't elicit feelings without a thought, okay? So this particular situation was, she was in a relationship, and I wouldn't even say she was in a relationship. She was entertaining someone who was already in a relationship. And the number of people I help who either did the cheating or who were cheated on or are the other person, I've seen it all, and everyone is welcomed. And it's actually great when all of you guys get together and start talking to one another and you start seeing all of the different perspectives, because not a single one of those groupings goes without negative emotion. But anyways, this thought, I shouldn't be doing this, it happens in a lot of scenarios. When you're talking to someone who did something bad to you, you might be thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. When you are still loving someone who betrayed you or is actively rude and disrespects you on a consistent basis, you're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. When you allow poor behavior in your life, you're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. Or you're simply not following a protocol you set in place. You're thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. And I asked her what was a little bit deeper for her, because I feel like that's like a blanket thought, and we could play with the idea that maybe it's a factual thing, but it's really an optional thought that you're choosing to believe. It's not helpful. But I wanted to go even deeper with her. If she had a lot of thoughts creating shame, what's the deeper one? And she said two that really kind of shook me at my core a little bit. The first one being, I'm devaluing myself. And the other was, I'm a bad person. So of course, when you are someone who is thinking, I'm a bad person, I've devalued myself, and I'm continuously devaluing myself by being mired in pain over this, by entertaining the idea that perhaps this guy actually loves me, or by constantly thinking about and talking about this situation. Of course, when she's thinking, I'm a bad person because of those things, I'm devaluing myself because of these things, of course she feels shame. Of course she's feeling ashamed. If I thought those thoughts, I would feel shame too. But remember, the crazy part is our thoughts are optional, no matter what. No matter what the rest of the world believes, no matter what our ideas were before, no matter what, your thoughts are and always will be optional. You get to decide what you think and when you think it and what you believe about yourself. Now, I can hear some of you saying, but shouldn't you think you're a bad person if you've cheated or you've done something bad? Shouldn't you feel ashamed for having done something like that so that you make sure you don't do it again in the future? But here's what I want to show you is that when you feel ashamed, do you know what happens? I want you to think about this for yourself. When you feel ashamed of something, what do you do? How do you behave? What actions do you take or what actions do you not take? For some, it might be hide, isolate, worry, ruminate about the problem, try to prove your worth, try to prove you're a good person, beat yourself up, berate yourself, be really, really mean to yourself. For this individual, she would overthink about the situation. She would try to figure out what to do next. She tried to control the situation. She tore herself apart, beat herself down, compared herself to this guy's other partner, told him that she wasn't going to stand for this, but would actually continue to stand for it, ruminate, talk about it, and continue to let it happen. It was literally perpetuating the problem. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I believe I'm devaluing myself, I'll prove to myself it's correct. If I believe I'm a bad person, I'll prove to myself it's correct to really show me that I'm a really bad person. And something I noticed was that in believing she was devaluing herself, she was also devaluing the experience of what she was going through, the cards that she was dealt. And what has this experience really shown her, taught her? And when I asked that of her, she had all kinds of lessons she learned in the time that she's been in this situation. Now, the real kicker, here it is. Are you ready for it? Many of you might think it's helpful to feel ashamed. That if you don't feel ashamed of yourself about this, then you won't change your behavior. And so did this Braveheart. She thought that as well. But when I asked her, hey, what problem is your brain trying to solve by believing that you're devaluing yourself and that you're a bad person? Why does your brain think it's useful to believe that? And it came through so loud and clear for her. The problem her brain was trying to solve by believing those things was to stop doing it. She wanted to change her action. She wanted to be strong enough to leave the situation and no longer be in a relationship with someone who was unavailable. And she wanted to make sure she did it in a way where she would never do it again. So she thought it was required to believe, I'm a bad person. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm devaluing myself, because maybe that would force her to stop doing it. So the question then becomes, is believing I'm a bad person or that I'm devaluing myself getting me closer to the solution of changing that action? And it was so clear. No, not even a little. We just saw that it was perpetuating the same action. It was clearly keeping her stuck in a cycle. She thought she needed to good enough, compelling reason. But what she really needed was to stop being a dick to herself. How can you feel strong when you're tearing yourself apart and telling yourself you're a bad person? How can you feel strong, courageous, and brave when you're telling yourself you're a bad person? I don't care how true it feels to you and the rest of the world. You are not all bad. Everyone is good and bad. Yes, you've done something you wish you wouldn't have. That is a behavior problem caused by a thought error. That is a behavior problem, not a character problem. So then, once we realized this for her, we could work on the real issue. And the real issue being, I want to leave this relationship. I do not want to entertain it anymore. She wanted to get out of the situation and not pursue unavailable men, but pursue a healthy and available partnership. She wanted zero connection with this person. She wanted to focus on herself, her work, her life, and really let go of everything having to do with this person. So how do you need to feel to show up that way? And for her, she felt like it would be good to feel valuable, like she matters. Now, going from I devalue myself and I'm a bad person and feeling shameful of that, all the way to I matter and I feel valuable is a pretty big leap. And I'm not going to be the person who says you can't make that leap when you are aware of, oh, wow, these look very different. You totally can. And if you can, do it. But if you're not someone who can just go from one extreme to the other, I want to share with you what I shared with this Braveheart was start with, I'm learning that I matter. This is a learning experience where I am learning that I actually matter. I'm learning that I matter. And when I believe that, I feel calm. And when I feel calm, we start acting and showing up like we matter, right? That I matter thought, learning that I matter, feeling calm, that is going to get her closer to leaving a situation that isn't for her. That is going to get her closer to showing up in a way she's proud of. That belief combined with massive action is going to change her entire life. My friends, shame is not required. It's not helpful. I actually think of shame a little similarly to guilt. I think that guilt is a great gut check, but it is not a long-term emotion that is useful. And I feel perhaps the same way about shame, but less accepting of it. Perhaps you feel shame and it indicates to you that maybe we need to check ourselves and decide if we want to do something differently. But the moment you start feeling shame about your character and about who you are, it is not helpful. You are not just one thing. You are all of it. You are not just good. You are not just bad. You are both. So if you're struggling with shame, either after a breakup or during a breakup, or perhaps you're stuck in a back and forth relationship, or like my client, you're somewhat in a relationship, but you know it's not for you and you deserve better, I want you to do the following steps. This is what I took my client through, the example that I gave you. The first step is you've got to figure out and find out what thoughts are making you feel ashamed. It's not what you're doing or not doing that makes you feel ashamed. It's what you make it mean about you. Now, I want to tell you and be clear that in doing this, in exploring your thoughts to determine what's making you feel ashamed, it doesn't mean you're condoning what's been going on. My client doesn't condone what's been going on or think it's good or okay just because she looked at what her thoughts were, what thoughts were making her feel ashamed. It's safe to look at your thoughts. And so I want to make sure that you're not telling yourself that you can't even take this first step, because then it means that you're okay with the behavior you've been participating in. Okay? We've got to look at, what am I making it mean about me that is making me feel ashamed? Okay? Step 2 is, what are you learning from this experience? What are the lessons you've learned thus far, and what are you going to do with those lessons if you haven't already started doing something with those lessons? It's so important to just recognize that your experience is your experience and there's value within it. Okay? The third step is I want to figure out what is the problem, right? I need you to figure out what is the problem my brain is trying to solve by believing the thoughts that are creating the shame. What does my brain think will happen if we really believe this thought and feel shame? It thinks there's a benefit to it. So it's like, what is the benefit? What are we actually trying to do? What's the actual problem we're trying to solve by believing these things about myself? And then 4, when you look at what you do when you feel shameful, does believing that thought actually get you closer to the solution of the problem that your brain is trying to solve? Or does it move you further away, like we saw in our example earlier? And the last step number 5, is what feeling would actually change your behavior? When we think about the behavior change that you want, how do you need to feel to fuel a different action, to show up in a way that you're proud of? Is it courageous? Is it brave? Is it proud? Is it valuable? Maybe important? And what do you need to believe about yourself and or your life to feel that way? And from there, when you gather all of that information, you just need to start believing that about yourself now. And then you scan for evidence that that is really true about you. And lastly, you take massive action that aligns with that belief in yourself. All right, my brave heart, you are an amazing soul. We are all humans here trying to figure it the F out. Be nice to yourself, because I promise you'll see your actions and your behaviors change when you're nice to yourself rather than being mean. I think that behavior change is best fueled by positive reinforcement. So if you want to change, be your best cheerleader. I love you all so much. I think the world of you, and I hope you have an amazing week. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you'd like to learn how to fast forward getting over your ex without spending months or years feeling angry, jealous, or unlovable, I would love to personally invite you to participate in our free on-demand video training, where we share 3 mind-blowing moments that will forever change your experience with your breakup or divorce. Come check it out at breakup-coach-dorothy.com.